Curtis goes to trial, and the gamble could cost him everything. Let us start with Curtis, because the decision he has made is the kind that makes the people who love you cover their eyes while simultaneously being unable to look away. Here is the situation as it stands. Curtis was offered a plea deal. 2 years, with the realistic possibility of parole in 8 months. That is not nothing. 8 months away from Portia and Desmond, and everything he has been fighting to hold on to is not a gift. But it is a known quantity, a defined outcome, a path that has a visible end, and that gets him back to his life with the minimum possible damage. Curtis said no. He is going to trial. And the people around him, Marshall, Stella, the family members who love him enough to tell him the hard truth even when he does not want to hear it, are genuinely scared about what that decision is going to cost him. Their words fell on deaf ears. Curtis heard the counsel being offered, processed it, and decided he knew better. Now, to understand why Curtis made this choice, you have to understand what is actually driving it. Because it is not entirely about innocence, though Curtis believes in his version of events with a conviction that has not been shaken by evidence or argument. The deeper thing, the thing running underneath all of the righteous outrage about being prosecuted, is Isaiah. Curtis cannot stand the idea of Isaiah. Not as Portia's partner, not as a presence in Desmond's life, and certainly not as the man who would essentially step into the role of father figure if Curtis is sitting in a cell. He watched Portia and Isaiah with that baby through a window, and the expression on his face told you everything about where his head really is. This is not purely about justice. This is about competition, about the terror that another man will become essential to his son's daily life while he is absent, and that by the time he gets out, the bond he is trying to protect will have formed around someone else. Curtis missed Trina, growing up. That wound is still fresh, even now, even with everything else happening. He was kept from his daughter for years because of decisions other people made, and the idea of history repeating itself, of Desmond growing up with a different man filling the space that should be his, is something Curtis cannot emotionally absorb. So he is rejecting the plea deal not just because he believes he is right, but because accepting it means accepting the time away, and the time away means Isaiah's presence, and Isaiah's presence means exactly what Curtis is most afraid of. That fear is understandable. It is also clouding his judgment in ways that may cost him far more than 8 months. Because going to trial means Isaiah takes the stand. And Isaiah on the stand is going to tell a story. His story. The version of events in which Curtis attacked him, broke his hand, potentially compromised his surgical career, caused real and lasting damage, with rage that was built on a premise that was wrong. Isaiah did not do what Curtis believed he did. The evidence for that has been available. The people around Curtis have been trying to help him see it. And yet here they are in a courtroom, because Curtis chose his outrage over his hearing. Martin is representing Curtis, which means the cross-examination of Isaiah is going to be aggressive and strategic and designed to make Isaiah look like the problem rather than the victim. Martin is good at what he does. He is going to find the angles that make Isaiah's testimony seem less credible, find the inconsistencies that create reasonable doubt, find the ways to reframe the narrative so that Curtis's actions look more defensive than predatory. And it might work, or it might not, because Isaiah is also going to be telling the truth. And the truth has a particular quality in a courtroom that skilled attorneys can chip away at but cannot entirely eliminate. The scene after Isaiah's testimony, when he vents to Elizabeth and Lucas about how it went, about what Martin did to him on the stand, about whether he helped or hurt his own case, is going to be one of the most emotionally raw moments this storyline has produced. Isaiah has been through something real. His career, his professional identity, the thing that defines him beyond any personal relationship, all of it has been put at risk by someone who is wrong about him and too proud to consider that possibility. Whatever verdict the court delivers, that damage is real, and it is not erased by a jury's decision. And Curtis, across the courtroom, vowing that no one is going to come between him and his son, that is a man who still has not reckoned with the possibility that he is the one who put the distance there. Not Isaiah. Not the legal system. Curtis. And his baby boy Desmond, too young to understand any of it, is sitting in the middle of a situation shaped entirely by adult mistakes that nobody has been honest enough yet to fully own. Whatever the verdict, This is not the end of the story between Curtis and Isaiah. Curtis has already promised that much. The grudge is going to outlast the courtroom. And a Curtis who walks out of that trial without having genuinely reckoned with whether he was wrong is a Curtis who is heading toward another collision, just by a different road. Trina's stalker is circling and the danger is about to become very real. Now, let us talk about Trina, because this storyline has been building with a slow, creeping dread of the best soap opera suspense, and it is now approaching the point where the threat stops being background and becomes immediate. Let us start with what we know for certain. There is a bulletin board somewhere in Port Charles covered in photographs of Trina. Someone built that. Someone collected those images, arranged them, spent time and thought and focused energy on creating a visual monument to their obsession with a young woman who has absolutely no idea it exists. That bulletin board is the clearest possible signal that whatever is coming for Trina is not casual or incidental. It is planned. It is personal. And whoever is behind it has been operating for long enough to accumulate that collection without detection. Trina's music career is accelerating. The showcase that she and Gio did together opened doors that were not open before. Real industry attention, real professional opportunity, the beginning of something that could define the next chapter of her life. That visibility, that increasing public presence, is a gift for someone like Trina who has worked hard and deserves to see that work recognized. But that same visibility is a gift for a stalker. More access. More opportunities to be near her under legitimate pretexts. More reasons to show up in spaces where Trina is present without it seeming out of place. Quinn is the name that keeps surfacing as the most likely suspect. The timing of his return, coinciding almost precisely with the moment the stalker's existence became visible to the audience, is too convenient to be innocent. He had bad history with Trina before. The apology he delivered at the cafe was either genuine growth or the most calculated piece of theater imaginable, and soap operas have taught us to view calculated reconciliation with suspicion. The way he watched her after that apology did not have the quality of someone who has moved on and is simply trying to repair a friendship. It had the quality of someone tracking. Simon is the other candidate whose behavior has been off in specific ways. His phone call telling someone on the other end that they needed to watch Trina still sits unresolved. A music executive telling someone to keep an eye on his new talent could have an innocent professional explanation. But in the context of everything else happening around Trina, it reads as something more. And Simon's interest in Trina specifically, the sense that he signed the duo for her rather than for the genuine partnership between her and Gio, is a detail that has never been fully explained. Hudson's arrival adds a new dimension to all of this. Hudson is connected to threads running through multiple storylines. His connection to Ethan. His possible connection to Phoebe's parentage. The phone call Simon was making, could Hudson be the person on the other end of those calls? Could Hudson's arrival in Port Charles and the escalation of the stalker threat be happening simultaneously for reasons that are not coincidental? The spoilers are now hinting at something that takes this story to its most dangerous point yet. Trina may be abducted. Actually taken. The obsession that has been building in the shadows, the photographs, the watching, the patient accumulation of access to her world, reaching a point where watching is no longer enough and whoever this person is decides to act directly. That prospect is genuinely frightening in the way that the best soap opera danger is frightening, not because it is cartoonish or theatrical, but because it is plausible. Because we have watched the pieces assembling. Because the people who should be paying attention are distracted by their own crises. Portia and Curtis are consumed by the trial and the new baby. Kai has been present and attentive, but cannot be everywhere. Gio, who lives on the Courtroom estate and who has already demonstrated this summer that he moves toward danger rather than away from it, is potentially the person best positioned to respond if something goes wrong. And here is where the story takes an additional turn that has the audience genuinely divided. The possibility of something developing between Gio and Trina, not as a betrayal of Kai, but as a consequence of shared danger and shared trust, and the particular kind of bond that forms between people who go through something terrifying together, is being floated as a direction this story might take. Gio saved Drew. He went into that lake without hesitation for a man he had no particular reason to save except that saving people is what Gio does. If Trina is in danger, Gio is going to respond the same way. And being the person who was there when it mattered most, who showed up and acted when everything was on the line, creates a connection that is almost impossible to walk away from unchanged. Whether that connection stays within the boundaries of friendship or moves somewhere more complicated is the question that is going to drive Trina's story through the back half of the summer. Kai is a good person who loves Trina genuinely. But Gio is also a good person who has been woven into Trina's life in ways that have become harder to categorize as simply professional or simply platonic. The danger coming for Trina is going to force a clarification. For now, the most important thing is that she is not safe. And the people around her need to start recognizing that before the threat becomes something that cannot be undone. Port Charles at its most dangerous and most alive. And now let us step back and look at what General Hospital has built this summer, because this week, with Curtis in a courtroom gambling everything on a verdict and Trina moving toward a danger nobody around her has fully registered, represents the summer operating at exactly the pitch it has been building toward. What makes these two stories particularly powerful when you look at them side by side is that they are both stories about people who are vulnerable in ways they cannot fully see. Curtis is vulnerable because his emotions have overridden his judgment, and he has made a legal decision based on jealousy dressed up as principle. He does not see that clearly. He cannot see it clearly. And the people who love him most have tried and failed to help him see it. Trina is vulnerable because the threat against her is invisible to her. She is going about her life, excited about her music, navigating her relationships, managing the complicated family dynamics that have always defined her world, without any awareness that someone has been building a case against her, cataloging her, planning something she has not consented to and does not know is coming. Both of them are walking into danger. Both of them have people around them who care deeply. And in both cases, the caring is not quite enough to prevent what is coming. That is the honest territory this show occupies at its best. Not the fantasy that love is always sufficient protection. The reality that sometimes the people we love walk into things we cannot stop, and what we can do is show up as fast as possible when the alarm finally sounds. Gio has already been established as someone who shows up fast, who does not calculate, does not hesitate, does not wait to be asked twice. If Trina's situation reaches its worst point, Gio is the person the audience is going to want running toward her. And the emotional complexity of what that rescue does to the relationships around it, what it means for Kai, what it means for Emma, what it means for Trina herself, is the story that plays out in the aftermath of the danger itself. Marshall and Stella, sitting at home waiting for Curtis's verdict, represent another kind of love that is sufficient and insufficient simultaneously. They are present. They told him the truth. They love him without reservation. And they still had to watch him walk into a decision that terrifies them because ultimately Curtis's choices are Curtis's to make. That is the weight of loving someone. That is the thing that soap operas understand better than almost any other form of storytelling. You can tell the truth. You can show up. You can be there every possible way you know how to be there. And still the people you love make choices that scare you, walk into dangers that threaten them, and leave you waiting for the outcome with your heart in your throat. Port Charles right now is a town full of people doing exactly that. Waiting, hoping, trying to be enough for the people they love in a moment when enough may not be possible. It is everything this show does best. And it is happening all at once.